You are watching an episode in our Landlording A to Z series, where we walk you through the steps, skills, and challenges involved with residential rental real estate investing. We share our expert advice, including the tips, tricks, and strategies we've learned over years of managing rental property. Please subscribe to our channel to get notified each time a new episode comes out, and please like and share our content with people you know who might be interested. Thanks for watching.
Hello, you have Chirs and Eli here again from Landlord Gurus, and today we are doing episode 18 of our Landlord Gurus Landlording A to Z series, where we have taken you all the way from the decision about whether or not to buy a rental to begin with, to each of the steps to getting it ready, renting up, managing maintenance, collecting rent, all kinds of fundamental steps that go into managing property. So today we're at one of these more subjective topics, and that is, when should you consider hiring a lawyer? So we've come up with 12 times that we think that it would be wise to consider hiring a lawyer. So first, just as a preface, please subscribe to our channel so that you will get alerts whenever new episodes come out. And we're going to continue putting out content to help you out, and share with others you think might be interested, do all those social media type things. We appreciate it. And we'll dive in. So just as our general take is that we know from firsthand experience that lawyers are expensive, and we absolutely don't hire lawyers all the time, nor are we advocating that you do that any more than is necessary. But making legal mistakes when it comes to managing rental property can be very expensive. And a lot of these are kind of cautionary examples of where to make sure you're on the right side of things and get legal help if you need it. And keep in mind here that the landlord-tenant rental laws around the country are changing constantly. They're different from city to city and state to state, and changing fast. So it's harder than it ever has been to stay compliant, and it's really imperative that you do. There can be hefty fines, and you can get into trouble, and people not paying, or vacancies, or all kinds of things. So anyway, we're going to talk about some circumstances where you think you should consider hiring a lawyer. Like I said, there are 12 of them. And these conditions that we'll mention where you're not sure, we suggest you first do your own research, figure out whether or not you've got the tools to make your own decision without outside counsel, or whether or not you need it, and then take the appropriate steps. So Chris will kind of take us on the next step from here.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of, finding the information and the resources that you need to determine whether you need to hire a lawyer or not, there's a lot of resources out there. Landlord Gurus, we've got resources on our website. You can check those out. We'll post some links below. You can also look at your local rental housing associations. Like here in Washington, we got the RHA of Washington. But yeah, you can find all educational material, courses, seminars, documents. There's partners of ours have the necessary forms and notices as well that you might need. And in some cases, you can even get direct advice. So there may also be directories of vendors, directories of lawyers, directories of specialists who can help you in some of these rental housing issues. So yeah, take a look around. It's all out there. A lot of it's out there. If you are in doubt about the proper way to handle a certain situation, we do think it's wise to get legal help. So like Eli said, we're going to run down some of, common instances where you might want to consider getting the help of a lawyer. And this is not an exhaustive list, but
it will be long.
But exactly. So the first one, when you first become a landlord, you've never done it before. So the first time, get a consultation, possibly with a lawyer. You can get advice on common pitfalls, local laws, wherever your rental property is located, and they might point you in the direction of some more really good resources. Number two is, if you're choosing rental agreements or getting rental agreements, you might want a lawyer to help you with some of those agreements that are tailored to your specific location, because the rules are different everywhere. One general lease isn't going to work around the entire country, so get one that's tailored to your location.
Yep, and that can't be overstated. Having a strong agreement is really important. And even more particular, you may want, number three is when you are coming up with your own documents. For example, developing a rental criteria checklist that guides you in how you select your tenants. Make sure you know the proper way to select tenants so that you're not putting in criteria on that list that you're not allowed to consider. House rules, for example, if you want your tenants to sweep the common area every day. That's a silly example, but that may or may not be, fit in there or be wise. Or special addenda, things like, are you going to allow a satellite dish on your building? excuse me, think all these things through and have the help of somebody who knows all of these things to think about and knows what's okay to put in documents and how to do it properly. So, and for me personally, right now, I'm considering writing in an early termination clause, a clause or early termination fee into my leases. I don't know right now, right as it sits right now, I don't know if it's legal to do that. So I go through having to fill vacancies where people have broken their lease often enough. I'm considering it, but I don't want to make a mistake and get myself in trouble either. So,
Yep.
Okay, number 4, anytime you're unsure about either ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, or fair housing laws, you absolutely need to do the research, really figure it out, and or get the help of a lawyer who knows the field. Knowing whether or not your property meets ADA laws for accessibility, for example, is important. The laws are much different for residential than they are for commercial spaces. Most residential spaces aren't required to have really extensive accessibility measures. But if you have any doubt about whether or not your building complies, you need to know.
So yeah, I mean, and it may also depend on the size of your building or whether it's a single family home or whatnot. So there are different exceptions and different variations that it's wise to really get the answer specific for your property. Yeah.
Well, and if you're doing remodeling or alterations or additions, sometimes that can trip new requirements as well. So knowing about that is important. And then on the Fair Housing Act question, imperative to know what the protected classes of people are that you really are explicitly mandated not to discriminate against. So a few of those are, sex, race, religion, et cetera. There's plenty out there, including on our site, on this subject matter, but you need to know and not discriminate in your practices against those people.
Exactly. And along the same lines, you need to know the rules about emotional support animals or service animals. And so that can be a tricky situation as well. So again, there's resources out there, but you might want to consult an attorney before you make a misstep or anything like that.
Yeah.
That was number 5. Number 6 is when a tenant fails to pay rent. That's a biggie. So you can, start with and we recommend starting with giving notices, pay or vacate notice or comply or vacate, depending on what your situation is. If the tenant doesn't comply or doesn't move out, then you might want to involve a legal professional, both in terms of what the steps are after that, and then somebody representing you down the road. So along the same lines, be prepared to give notice, as soon as rent is late. So it's just sort of an aside, a helpful hint, but you can consult an attorney so you know which forms to use, how to use them, how to serve that notice. And we've got a future episode lined up where we are going to be talking about giving notices. So, but yeah, again, time is of the essence. And so having an attorney that you can rely on for something like that is a great way to get started.
And it may come down on that to just, these are people who will know those court systems. They may know what the backlog is or what the dynamics are of the machinery of the process, the bureaucracy and that type of thing. So they know what to do. They know what's going on in that world, and they can often help you through it.
And they can probably give you advice, on maybe which path to proceed down. Maybe it's an instance where eviction might not be your best outcome or something like that. There might be other alternatives.
They might tell you to pay cash for keys.
Right.
They might tell you to cut your losses and pay somebody to move out. And they might be doing your service by doing that, as hard as that type of thing is to stomach. But
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, number 7 is especially the first time that you enter into an eviction or even give notice that could lead to an eviction. Most of us, until we get there, have not studied the process about what forms, when they should be served, who to whom, and in what form. So if it's all new to you, and especially since time is of the essence, the more you drag things out, the longer something can drag on. It may help to just jumpstart things and get some help right off the bat. Know the rules about how to serve notices properly, to the extent that you can up front. And then a lawyer can help you learn the process and develop a timeline for what needs to be done, so that every step is taken as efficiently and as effectively as possible along the way. So yeah, that's anytime you're going into, especially for the first time into an eviction case, likely a good idea. Number 8 is violations where basic initial terms like a non-smoking policy or a no pets policy is violated. Some of these things that you kind of can't remedy, if somebody doesn't pay, you can send them a pay or vacate notice. And if they pay, it's all done. But if somebody becomes a smoker or moves somebody in or moves an animal in, it's a different thing. And getting some help to how to navigate that could be helpful.
Exactly. Yeah. And along the same lines, the next step is violations of other lease terms. So, not just pets or smoking, but there can be other issues not related to payment that are, again, more subjective in terms of disruptive behavior or dangerous behavior, damage to the property, or interpersonal conflicts, either with you or between the tenants, messy or unsanitary conditions that make the property unattractive or even dangerous, which I've dealt with this before as well. It can be sort of a gray area, and you don't really want to misstep because it could be construed as, something personal against them or something against if you're violating some other term. So it may be a good instance in something like this where you're a little unsure, but you know that something is going on that's not supposed to be going on there, that you might want to consult a lawyer.
You had a sanitation issue, right, Chris?
Yeah, it was messy and unsanitary, potentially dangerous as well, just in terms of garbage and stuff in front of the heaters and whatnot. So it was a situation where it needed to be taken care of. So there were notices that had to be written and delivered and things like that. And so again, it's a process, and you got to know what the steps are and how to do it so that you're protected.
So that's a good example, right? Where you did go to the local rental housing association, use their forms, which here are very good, to give notice that this issue needed to be fixed, right? And cleanup needed to be done.
Exactly. It was a comply or vacate notice. So, it's a 10-day comply or vacate where you list out the actual clause in the lease that's being violated and how it's being violated and what the remedies should be. And then, the tenant then has 10 days to deal with that. And
right.
Again, there's, depending on where you are, there's certain ways that those 10 days are counted,
Yeah.
So a lot of nuance there. It seems relatively simple, but it could potentially be complicated. And if you're not doing it correctly, maybe it doesn't get done. And that dangerous situation can fester for a while.
So you served the notice, and then the tenant followed through and did what needed to be done.
They did.
Right?
Yes.
So that's the best case scenario. That's like backing up a little bit, where it's like, okay, if you come up against an issue, first do your research, figure out what you're supposed to do, so then you took that first step, right? And it worked.
Yeah.
It's most often with all of these things we're talking about, it's most often that it's the next step. If it didn't work the first time, then that's where I start to think about contacting a lawyer.
Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. But you got to think about it pretty quickly because things can stretch on.
Right. Yeah. And again, there are resources out there that'll help you, but knowing where those resources are to begin with. So for me, I knew, okay, I can go do this and I'll get this form and fill this out. If you're back at square one and you don't even know where to get that form. So that's, again, like back to step one, if it's your first time and you first get a property, it's potentially good to consult an attorney, find out what those resources are, have them at your disposal so that when it does come up, like you said, you're ready to go and you're quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then next on our list is number 10, anytime someone is at risk of bodily harm, whether that be through violence or dangerous behavior. So again, a situation that you probably won't encounter very often, but when it does, you need to know how to proceed. And like you said, you take that first step to try and deal with that situation. And if that doesn't work, especially if someone's at bodily harm, that's the kind of thing where it needs to happen quickly and it needs to happen correctly.
And having taken the step to enlist the help of a lawyer early may shield you from liability down the road if something does happen. Exactly. It may help. So. Okay, number 11, anytime there's any kind of criminal activity at your property, whether that be guests of tenants or your tenants, and it's another kind of hair trigger in my mind where as soon as you see that, I wouldn't mess around. Really what you want to do there, if you find that somebody is practicing criminal behavior on your property, is you don't want that person as a tenant anymore. And if that first step of asking them to leave would be my first step, doesn't work, then I would pretty well immediately be getting help. And the possibility is that you also need the help of law enforcement in that case too.
Exactly. Yep.
And lastly, number 12, anytime a tenant threatens to sue you.
Hopefully it never happens, but
hopefully it never happens. Sometimes you can tell that a tenant thinks that they could sue you, but doesn't really know that they can't. And then I guess if you're confident in that, then maybe you don't need to. But if they don't have any ground to stand on, then that's one thing. But you want to be prepared, and you also want to demonstrate that you're prepared to defend yourself. So,
yeah.
Okay, so that's our 12 examples of when we think it's a good idea to consider hiring an attorney or some kind of legal help that specializes in rental housing law. Really, you want to just be making sure that you're doing everything in an above board way. You want to keep bad situations from either dragging out or deteriorating. You want to set boundaries with tenants early when things are not going the way that they should. And often, like we said, you can take that first step yourself. But if it's not working, then unfortunately, we have a system where that you sometimes will need the help of a professional. And we hope this is kind of a good set of things to get your mind thinking about the future, about when it might be a good idea. And if you have questions or other thoughts, comment here, and it's all food for thought. So thanks for watching, and we'll be out with our next episode soon. Please, again, subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.